Ah, the Sony Walkman. You might think it's a relic from the annals of audio history, but you'd be wrong. Let's check out the new kids on the block. We go about our lives listening to our own private soundtracks like it's no big deal, but it hasn't always been that way. In fact, it became a very big deal when Sony introduced the first Walkman to the US market in 1980, a year after it was unveiled in Japan. The story goes that Sony co-founder Masaru Ibuka wanted to listen to opera during long flights. A Sony engineer created a prototype personal listening device based off of the Sony Pressman cassette recorder. Known as the Walkman in Japan, it was initially called the Soundabout in the US market. This blue and silver box was called the TPS-L2, and it came with its own headphones. The TPS-L2 cost $150. That's about $622 in today's dollars. So yeah, it wasn't inexpensive. Sony ended production of the cassette player Walkman in 2010, but the Walkman brand is still very much alive and well. The Walkman has evolved over the years, from cassette to CD, to mini disc, to MP3, to high-resolution streaming, but it's still a Walkman. In fact, these beauties right here are examples of today's Walkman. These are high-res streaming music players that let you download apps and enjoy a level of on-the-go sound quality that was only a dream back in 1980. I'll come back to these in a few, but first, let's take a walk down Walkman memory lane. So the original TPS-L2 Walkman featured two headphone jacks and something called a hotline button that you could use to mute music and turn on a built-in microphone. This allowed two people to share the Walkman and carry on a conversation while listening to music. Get this, Sony co-chairman Akio Morita was worried that it would be seen as rude for one person to be listening to music alone. Ah, how times have changed. The WM2, or the Walkman 2, followed in 1981. With many other cassette player models to come, 45 to be exact. Do you remember the Sony Sports Walkman in bright yellow? That first came out in 1984. It was waterproof, so you could play your favorite mixtapes without worrying about splashes from the pool. I desperately wanted one of those back in middle school. The cassette tape was far from dead, but something new was on the horizon, a circular disc known as the CD. In fact, the compact disc was co-developed by Sony and Philips. And in 1984, Sony released the D50, the first portable CD player. You may know it better as the Sony Discman, which Sony rebranded it to in 1999. It was portable, but a bit clunky. I actually remember my father going for his evening walk with his Discman in a case that he wore with a strap around his neck, and he would hold it gently in both hands because CD skipping was an issue. In 1990, Sony released the TCD D3 Walkman, which used the first digital audio tape format. It was similar to a compact cassette, but smaller and digital instead of analog. DAT could record at sampling rates equal to or higher than a CD. However, the DAT format was never widely accepted. In the early 90s, Sony unveiled the MZ-1 and MZ-2P mini disc players. The Sony mini disc was a small form of storage that was shaped like a tiny CD. These players could be used to record audio, and they were designed to prevent discs from being damaged if you recorded while you were on the go. These personal mini disc players were nice to have because you didn't need a computer to burn your tracks to them. Fast forward to 1999, and digital file playback became a reality for the Walkman with the NWMS-7. This super lightweight player stored music from your computer on a tiny Magic Gate memory stick. You could download songs from the internet or rip tracks from your CDs, then transfer the music to the memory stick Walkman via your computer's USB port. The music, whether streamed or copied from a CD, was stored on your computer's hard disk using Sony's own A-Track 3 audio compression technology. In 2004, Sony released its first network Walkman to use a hard disk drive for storage, the NWH MZ-1. This had 20 gigabytes of internal hard drive memory. However, it only played Sony's 8-track 3 format, not MP3. It wasn't until the HD3 in 2005 that Sony had a player that could play MP3s natively. By this time, Sony was playing catch-up with the iPod, which came out 4 years prior. And the iPod wasn't the first MP3 player. That distinction goes to the IMAGERY Labs F10 in 1998, but it did massively popularize the MP3 format. Several milestones were to follow. The X series in 2009 was the first Walkman to support Wi-Fi. It was also the industry's first video MP3 player to offer integrated digital noise canceling technology. The Z-1000 in 2011 was the first Walkman to run on Android. Next was the F800, the first Walkman to support the FLAC format. In 2013, Sony released the F880, the first Walkman to support high-res audio. That's 192 kilohertz, 24-bit. That brings us to the present. These are 4 modern-day Walkman music players: the A306, the ZX707, the WM1A-M2, and the top-of-the-line WM1Z-M2. Each one has features and designs you could hardly imagine back in 1980. Things like AI-powered DSEE ultimate upscaling and wireless capability. They all have 2 cool throwback features too: a cassette tape user interface and a digital volume knob that looks like an analog knob. All of these models are supported by Android and compatible with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, so you can stream music or access your own digital files. These players all show off the signature Sony sound. Warm, clear, rich, and bold, but with increasing degrees of power and sound transparency as you go up the price ladder. Priced at $350, the A306 is an entry-level model with sleek black styling, a 3.6-inch screen, and a weight of only 4 ounces. It's the smallest Walkman, making it extra super portable. The A306 comes with 32 gigs of internal storage with the option to add an SD card. Like all of the models here, the A306 supports all major file formats, including MQA. You are going to get up to 36 hours of 44.1 kilohertz FLAC playback. Given its lower power output, you'll get the best performance from the A306 with IEMs. The ZX707, which sells for $898, is a step up from the A306. It's got sleek black styling with copper accents and a generous 5-inch HD display. It weighs twice as much as the A306 at about 8 ounces, and it's a bit bigger. You get 64 gigabytes of internal memory plus the option to add an SD card. Moving up is the WM1A-M2, which costs $1,398. You get a jump in power here, giving this player the ability to drive higher impedance headphones, something the previous 2 players can't do well. While it's not much heavier than the ZX707, the WM1A-M2 is a larger player. Here you'll get 128 gigabytes of memory plus the SD card option, a 5-inch display, and up to 40 hours of playback. That's pretty stellar. Finally, the WM1Z-M2, which costs $3,700. In case the gold and the price didn't clue you in, this is Sony's top-of-the-line Walkman. It's housed in a gold-plated OFC chassis, and the OFC purity has been bumped up to 99.99% over the original WM1Z. This pays dividends when it comes to clarity and expansiveness of the sound. Now, it's been called the golden brick, and yes, it does weigh a bit more at just over 17 ounces. Upgraded internal parts like solder with gold, specialized cable running from the amp base to the headphone jack, and high polymer capacitors can be found inside. These things combine to push the sound quality to the next level with tantalizing transparency, warmth, and richness. The WM1Z-M2 has the same battery life and screen size as the WM1A-M2, but double the internal memory. Well, it's been quite a trip down memory lane. We hope you've enjoyed this retrospective on the Sony Walkman. It's hard to imagine what might be next for the iconic portable music player, but we bet Sony will come up with something amazing. We've linked reviews to 3 of these current Walkman models down below, so check those out if you want more info. If you have any questions, drop a comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thanks so much for watching.